she was burning her own hair to stay alive. That's where we need to start. Not with the trailhead. Not with the birthday plans. Not with the Instagram post about adventure and love. We need to start at hour 22, when Jessica sat on a ledge of fossilized limestone 30 feet above a flooded chamber floor inside a Wyoming mountain, and she held a fistful of her own hair over a dying flame because it was the only thing left to burn. Her hands weren't shaking from fear. They were shaking because stage 2 hypothermia had already begun dismantling her motor control. Her core temperature had dropped to a threshold where the body starts making brutal decisions, pulling blood away from the extremities, concentrating what little heat remains around the vital organs. She knew what that meant. She had read enough survival guides to recognize the symptoms. And Spencer, standing next to her in the absolute dark, watching her burn her own hair to stay warm, he knew it too. They had maybe 4 hours left before that process became irreversible. And no one knew exactly where they were. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know we've covered isolation events before. The Nutty Putty Cave case, which we analyzed several months ago, showed us what happens when the geometry of a confined space becomes a death sentence, when the body itself becomes the trap. But the Darby Canyon incident is different. It's more insidious. Because unlike Nutty Putty, where the danger was immediately visible, this cave hid its lethality behind beauty. Behind ice formations that looked like cathedral architecture. Behind passages that seemed logical, systematic, almost welcoming. The cave didn't look like it was going to kill them. That was the point. Let me give you the full picture. It's August 11th, 2018. A Saturday. Spencer is turning 31 years old in 2 days, and the man has spent the last several weeks planning what he considers the perfect birthday adventure. He and his wife Jessica, 24 years old, sharp, physically capable, not a beginner, live in Idaho Falls, Idaho.
Ready when you are.
They are not weekend hikers.
Hey, little one.
They
So
climb.
good to see you.
They summit peaks. Spencer
Look who's
proposed
here,
to Jessica at the
sweetie.
top of Mount Bora, the highest point in the state of Idaho. These are people who understand the outdoors, who train for it, who respect it. That context matters, because
We're
what
right here
happened to
on the
them
trail.
cannot be explained by
Okay, the ice
carelessness
cave
or
should be
ignorance
just
alone.
over that ridge. Let's go.
What happened was something more dangerous than either of those things. What happened was confidence in incomplete information. In the weeks before the trip, Spencer made calls.
All
He
right.
contacted local
It's just
officials.
above that ledge up there.
He searched
I see it
online
now.
databases.
Let's make this last climb.
He was looking for a map of Darby Canyon Ice Cave, a documented cave system in western Wyoming, not far from the Idaho border. And here's the first thing that should have raised an alarm, though it didn't register as one at the time. He couldn't find a reliable map. The cave was known to be complex, the passages altered by rockfalls and shifting ice from season to season. Published routes were limited, nearly non-existent. Spencer interpreted this as a gap in the literature. What it actually was a warning written in the absence of documentation. The plan was to enter the cave through its primary ice mouth and exit through a connected system of passages on the other side.
All right, here we
Total
go.
route distance, approximately
so
2
cold
miles,
right here. Let me
or
feel that.
3.2
Turn on your
kilometers.
light. Let's see what's in here.
Estimated completion time, 6 to 12 hours, depending on conditions. They left their 1-year-old daughter with Jessica's mother and told her, if we're not back by
You're so
midnight,
big.
call search and
She's
rescue.
missed you so much.
That part of their planning
I'll
was
see you
sound.
soon, okay?
That single
Be safe, we
instruction
love
would
you.
ultimately save their lives. They parked at the trailhead and hiked 5 miles uphill through summer heat, arriving at the cave entrance just after noon. The moment they stepped close to the mouth, the temperature differential hit them like a physical impact, 80 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and pouring out of the cave entrance.
Wow, it's
a breath
really
of Arctic
cold.
cold, the kind that reaches the back of
feels
your
like
throat
glass.
before you
Let's
even
go
step
in.
inside. They layered up. They switched on their headlamps. And they walked in. What they saw in those first moments was genuinely extraordinary. The walls were coated in ice that caught their light and scattered it in every direction, blue-white and crystalline, translucent in places, opaque in others. Stalactites of frozen water descended from the ceiling in formations that looked engineered rather than natural. The floor glistened. It was one of those environments that tricks the brain into a state of wonder, into dropping its guard, into thinking, this is a gift. And that cognitive response, that O response,
Então,
is
como é que
something
será?
we've documented in previous cases on this channel, most notably in the deep sea platform incident, where crew members reported a similar suppression of alarm signals in the presence of an overwhelming environment. The brain doesn't process beauty and danger simultaneously with equal weight. Beauty tends to win. They move deeper. The cave was not a single tunnel. It was a branching system, a maze carved by water and temperature over thousands of years, with passages that split and converged and split again. Some sections
The
required
notes say
crawling.
center, but look at that ice.
Others opened into chambers tall enough
Maybe
to
the
stand
vertical
in.
crack?
No, the
In several
leftmost path.
places,
It matches
they
the
waded
diagram.
through running water that
Keep
soaked their
moving.
boots and the lower half of their clothing immediately. They noted old climbing anchors
Just behind
fixed
you.
into the walls, evidence that others had passed through. They saw boot prints in the sediment. These were the signals their brains chose to amplify. Somebody has been here. This is a known route. We are on the right track. But here's what they didn't account for.
They're
Those
definitely
anchors could
ours.
have been placed years
We're on
ago.
the right path.
Those
Good, let's
boot
keep
prints
going.
could belong to someone who got just as lost as they were about to get. The cave changes. The ice shifts. What was a throughout 2 seasons ago may have collapsed into a dead end overnight. And no one had updated the record. At around the 4-hour mark, something changed. The novelty began to fade. Spencer and Jessica started checking
What
their
do you
watches
think?
more frequently. The
I'm
cave
not
wasn't
sure.
narrowing toward an
This
exit
way?
the way the route description had suggested. Instead, it kept branching, new passages opening off the main corridor at irregular intervals, none of them obviously correct, none of them obviously wrong. And this is where the critical tactical error became fully visible in hindsight. 2 hours earlier, when they descended their first rappel section, they had pulled the rope down behind them. They had done this deliberately, operating under the assumption that they would not need to return the same way, that the cave's through route would
gone.
carry
It's
them
gone.
out the other side.
Yeah, I know.
Pulling that rope was not a mistake born of panic. It was a calm, deliberate decision based on a plan. And it was the decision that sealed them inside. By hour 9, they entered a large circular chamber. A stream ran through it, and the sound of water echoing off the domed ceiling gave the illusion that the cave continued beyond this point, that the water was going somewhere, leading somewhere.
Keep
They
moving.
followed it.
It's got to be
The
here.
stream stopped.
I see it. There.
It simply ended inside the
But it
chamber,
just-
vanishing into the
it
rock
goes into the
beneath their
wall.
feet as if the mountain had swallowed it. There was no exit. The walls were solid. The ceiling was solid. They scanned every inch of that chamber with their headlamps, moving the beams across every crack and seam in the rock, and found nothing. By midnight, hour 12, the temperature inside the chamber was sitting just at or below freezing. Their clothes were wet from the water crossings. They both understood, without needing to say it explicitly, that the threat profile had changed. Hypothermia was
Okay.
no longer a theoretical risk.
Everything out?
It was an active condition beginning to take hold,
See what we got.
and that meant
Not
everything
much.
changed. Finding the exit dropped to
I
a
don't know if this is
secondary
gonna
priority.
work.
We'll make it work.
Staying one long enough to be
We
found
have
became
to.
the mission. They built a fire. There is no firewood inside a Wyoming ice cave. There is no kindling, no dry timber, nothing organic that burns cleanly. So they burned what they had. They gathered every piece of trash in their packs, wrappers, paper, packaging, and burned it. It lasted minutes. When it burned out, they moved to the equipment, Spencer's foam knee
God,
brace,
this
which
smoke.
caught and burned with a chemical smell that filled the chamber and
It's
made
all we
their
have
eyes
left.
water.
We have
Then
to
his
make it
backpack
last.
frame, the nylon burning with a black smoke that coated the ceiling above them. Then pieces of clothing. Then, and this is the part that stays with you, Jessica held portions of her own hair over the flame, because it burned slowly, and in that cave, slow was everything. Between
going.
fires, they exercised. Jumping
Almost
jacks,
done.
push-ups,
Just a few more.
anything to maintain core
Okay.
temperature, to keep the blood moving to their extremities. They held each other during the rest periods. They forced themselves to eat small
Still
portions of the
alive.
food they still carried, knowing the caloric
Just
burn
keep
of
breathing.
shivering was accelerating their depletion.
How much longer?
This is
We'll make
textbook
it.
wilderness survival protocol, and they were executing it with remarkable discipline for 2 people who had been in the dark for over 14 hours. And then, and this is the detail that most accounts gloss over, but which represents a critical pivot point in the incident, one of them noticed the rope.
I don't think I
Hanging
can reach
from
it.
above, near a small
too
waterfall
high.
on the far end of the
We need
chamber,
to find something
was a
to
length
stand
of
on.
rope. Old rope, dark with moisture and age. Its bottom end stopped approximately 10 feet above the chamber floor, just out of reach. Neither of them had seen it when they first entered. The waterfall had obscured it, or the light angle had hidden it. But it was there. And the question it posed was immediate. Does that rope lead up? And if it leads up, does up lead out? Spencer is 6'2". He positioned himself beneath the rope, and Jessica climbed onto his shoulders. She stretched as high as her arms would allow, fingers reaching for the nylon.
Reach! I
Every
can't.
time she made contact,
One more time.
the wet rope slipped through her grip.
It's too high.
They tried this again. And again.
We have to find
And
another
again.
way out of here.
Each attempt drained energy they
We're not
couldn't
alone.
replace. Each failure dropped their morale to a floor they had not yet found. At some point, they stopped and sat down, and Spencer looked at the rope hanging uselessly above them, and he thought something he had not allowed himself to think until that moment: we might not get out of this. That thought, that specific cognitive rupture, is one of the most dangerous moments in any survival scenario. We documented a nearly identical psychological inflection point in the Byford Dolphin analysis we released earlier this year, where the moment individual survivors accepted the impossibility of their situation, their decision-making degraded rapidly.
You can't.
Spencer and Jessica did not let that happen. They rested. They ate. And the next morning, at around 6 a.m., they tried the rope again. Same result.
Do you think it will hold?
The nylon, soaked in slick, refused to hold.
We don't have a choice.
By noon on Sunday, hour 24, they made a decision. One last attempt. Jessica climbed onto Spencer's shoulders one final time, and this time, instead of trying to grip the rope directly, she worked it into a slip knot, a loop she could use as a foothold. It took multiple attempts.
Keep going.
Her fingers
through
were
it.
barely functional,
I'm
but
trying.
she got it.
Just
She
hold
rigged
me.
the knot, attached her harness and belay device to the rope, and she began to climb. Water from the falls soaked her immediately. Her hands went numb within the first few feet. But the rope held. She climbed. 30 feet up, the rope passed through a small opening in the chamber ceiling, a narrow slot in the rock that she barely fit through,
Keep
and
going.
she emerged onto a
It's gotta
ledge
be
above.
up there.
Spencer followed.
The rope ends
They
here.
sat
How do
on
we
that
get up
ledge,
from there?
30 feet
See
above
that
the
grip?
chamber
It
floor,
looks promising,
and looked
but
up.
it's a long way up.
The rope
Risky
kept
without
going.
protection. We'll have to be careful.
Higher still. And near the top of the vertical shaft above them, the rope disappeared into a crack in the wall. The shaft kept going beyond that, open, climbable, but the rope ended, and to continue, they would have to free climb the remaining distance with no protection. Jessica went first. She found holes in the fossilized seashells embedded in the limestone wall, ancient marine shells pressed into the rock from when this entire region was an inland sea. She moved upward carefully, methodically. And then one of the larger shells broke away from the wall. She fell. 15 feet. Instantaneous. In the dark, Spencer heard the sound before he processed what was happening, the scrape of boots on rock, a sharp impact, and he reached out blindly and caught her. He
We
caught
fell
her,
down 30 feet.
one arm
The
in
path
the
above is
absolute
tricky.
dark, at the edge of
Is
a
that a
30-foot
foothold?
drop.
Yes, that is a foothold.
They sat on that ledge for a long time after that. Spencer shone his light up at the shaft above them and saw what he had not been able to see from below. The shaft simply ended. The crack the rope disappeared into was a terminal crack. There was no exit above them.
I
They
hear
had
it.
spent nearly everything they had left, every calorie, every ounce of grip strength, every fragment of psychological reserve,
what?
climbing toward a dead end. And then they heard voices. Faint. Echoing. Distant.
Help!
Spencer
We're
froze.
here!
Jessica
We're on the
grabbed her
ledge!
safety whistle and blew it
Over
as hard as
here!
she could, and the sound
We
of
see
it
the
ricocheted
lights!
through the cave like a gunshot. They yelled. They screamed. And moments later, light beams appeared from around a bend in the passage below. Search and rescue had been dispatched at 7 a.m. Sunday morning, 5 hours earlier, after Jessica's mother made the call when midnight came and went with no word. Teams of volunteers had been working through the cave system for hours, checking every known area where
scent is
people had
getting
been lost
stronger.
before. They found
Burned
nothing in those
nylon
zones.
over to the left.
But further in, one of the searchers caught something. Not a sound. Not a light. A smell. The chemical scent of burned nylon, drifting through the cave's natural airflow. They followed the smoke. The rescuer who climbed the rope to reach them on that ledge, 30 feet up, in a soaked shaft, in the dark, made that ascent in 45 minutes. When he reached them, he immediately identified full-body hypothermia in
You're
both
alive.
survivors.
We've got
He
you.
gave them dry clothing and heat packs. He told them they were alive.
The way out isn't up.
And then he told them
It's down
something
here.
that, in any
Down
other
there?
context, might have been darkly
Seriously?
funny. They had been heading
Oh,
in the right
God.
direction.
Look,
The through-route
it
existed,
keeps going.
but they were still only halfway through the system. The exit they had
The path was
dismissed,
always
the
there.
flooded section
Keep
of the
moving.
chamber that disappeared
Not far
into the
now.
rock, was
I'm
the
trying.
path.
Push through.
It
You've
was
got
passable.
Yeah.
In some areas, the water would rise to Spencer's neck.
Keep going.
At one
Find the
point,
gap.
there was only 4 inches of clearance
little
between
further.
the water's surface and the ceiling, 4 inches of air to tilt your head and breathe as you moved through it. But it went somewhere. And with the rescue team guiding them, they moved through it. They moved through the darkness and the cold and the water one last time, and they came out the other side. Spencer emerged from that cave on Sunday evening, pale and barely standing.
Thank you. She's
He was
here.
surrounded
She's
by
safe.
approximately 20
Oh, my
volunteers
baby.
who had
Thank
spent
you,
more
thank
than
you.
15 hours searching for them.
to you.
Their
Happy
1-year-old daughter
birthday
was
to
there,
you.
held in
Happy
the arms
birthday,
of
dear.
Jessica's
Happy
mother.
birthday to you.
And as Spencer stepped into the open air, one of the rescuers started singing Happy Birthday. In the aftermath, Spencer spent time reflecting on the planning that had gone into that trip. He had expected a 2-mile route. He had covered nearly 8 miles, 12.8 kilometers, of unmapped passages. He had made calls and done research and taken precautions, and none of it had been sufficient, because the information he was working from was fundamentally incomplete. The cave had changed. The records hadn't. That is the technical verdict of this incident. Not incompetence. Not recklessness. The failure of an information system to keep pace with a dynamic environment. Darby Canyon Ice Cave doesn't stay the same. It shifts. Ice melts and refreezes in configurations that didn't exist the previous season. Rock falls open new passages and close old ones. The cave that was documented, partially, insufficiently, is not the cave Spencer and Jessica entered. And there was no mechanism in place to communicate that discrepancy to them before they pulled that rope and committed to a route that no longer existed as documented. The cascade after that decision was, in a strict technical sense, inevitable. Not because of bad luck. Because of the architecture of the situation. Once the rope was pulled, the decision tree collapsed. Every subsequent branch led either to the exit
All right,
or to the
team,
same
listen up.
outcome.
The
30
target
hours
area is just beyond
underground,
the ridge,
burning
about
what they
5
had,
kilometers
waiting
in.
to be
We're
found.
splitting into 3 groups.
Search
Team,
and
check
rescue
passage
teams in
3.
that area train specifically
Copy.
in Darby Canyon Ice
Looking
Cave.
left. All clear here.
They do this because calls for help
Forward,
from that
carefully.
cave are not uncommon. The cave attracts people who are capable but underinformed, confident but working from incomplete maps, experienced in the outdoors but unprepared for an environment that is, by its nature, non-static. The training those teams had received, the familiarity with the cave's layout, the knowledge of where people tend to get lost, is the direct reason Spencer and Jessica are alive. It is also the clearest evidence of a systemic failure. If rescuers train in a cave specifically because it generates rescue calls, the question must be asked, what does that tell us about the information available to people planning to enter it? There is a broader principle here, one that recurs across almost every case we document on this channel. It's not the known danger that kills people. It's the danger that presents itself as a known quantity, the cave you've read about, the dive you've briefed, the system you've studied, but that is, in practice, operating outside the parameters of any existing record. The gap between the documented version and the real version is where the fatal decisions get made. Spencer didn't ignore the information available to him. He followed it precisely. And that's what makes this case so difficult to sit with. He pulled the rope because the plan said he wouldn't need it. The plan was wrong. And in environments like Darby Canyon, being wrong doesn't earn you a second chance. It earns you 30 hours of burning your own belongings in the dark, hoping the smell of smoke reaches someone who knows where to look. They were lucky. They were disciplined. And they survived. But the rope stays pulled. That part doesn't change.